The sky over Colorado was the kind pilots bragged about, calm, cloudless, the kind of air that made passengers fall asleep and captains relax their shoulders. Flight 237 cruised at 34,000 feet, sunlight gleaming off the wings as if the whole aircraft had been dipped in gold. Inside, trays clicked shut, infants dozed against tired parents, and the hum of the engines created a steady, soothing lull. And in seat 14A, Emily Hart slept like she hadn't slept in months, hoodie pulled over her eyes, headphones dangling from one ear, her backpack wedged against her legs. She was a quiet presence, the kind most passengers noticed for half a second and forgot. Then the world tore open. It started as a low rumble, something subtle enough that the flight attendants didn't pause their drink service. But the rumble grew. Vibrations trembled through the floor, rattling cups, shaking window frames. Emily's eyes snapped open. Then, boom! A violent explosion ripped through the left side of the aircraft. The entire cabin jolted downward. A man in row 11 screamed as his coffee splashed across the aisle. Overhead bins burst open, spilling backpacks and jackets onto startled passengers. The lights flickered. And then came the sound no one forgets. The engine winding down into silence. The cabin fell quiet for a single, impossible second, everyone frozen in disbelief. Then chaos detonated. Passengers grabbed seats, grabbed strangers, grabbed anything that felt stable. A woman wailed. A teenager cursed loudly. Someone kept shouting, "What was that? What was that?" as if repeating the question might make the answer less terrifying. The oxygen mask slammed down from the ceiling with a thud like fists hitting walls. Screams filled the air. Emily's pulse roared in her ears. She grabbed the mask automatically, fitting it over her face, but her eyes were fixed out the tiny oval window. The left engine, once a glowing silver turbine, was now a shredded mass of metal. Flames flickered inside the torn casing. She knew what that vibration meant. She felt it once before. Her stomach twisted. The PA system crackled to life, the captain's voice breaking with static. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We've lost our left engine. Please remain seated, oxygen masks on." His voice wasn't calm. It wasn't reassuring. He sounded terrified. That was worse than the explosion. The aircraft rolled sharply to the left, dipping toward the ground. Luggage slid across the floor. Flight attendants braced themselves on seat backs, but even they weren't steady. One fell to her knees. Emily gripped the armrests until her knuckles went white. She swallowed, throat dry. The memories clawed at her, the sound of metal splitting, the smell of fuel, the panicked yell of her father's voice as he struggled with the controls. Her breath shortened. Not again. Not again. Not again. Captain Warren's voice returned over the speakers, louder this time, strained, choked by panic he clearly couldn't hide. "I need everyone to stay calm. Flight attendants, take your seats immediately. I repeat, take your seats. We are declaring an emergency." Another lurch. Another drop. Several people screamed. Emily's body reacted before her mind processed the thought. She tore off her hoodie, pushed her hair back behind her ears, and sat upright. Her legs trembled. Her chest felt too tight, but something inside her cracked open, sharp and electric. She couldn't sit here. She couldn't wait for someone else to fix it. Because she recognized every sound the plane was making. The clunky, uneven rumble, the aerodynamic drag on the left wing, the yaw pulling the aircraft sideways. This wasn't turbulence. It wasn't a partial failure. This was spiraling. A stall was coming. People were praying now. Others were sobbing, some silently, others out loud. A little boy cried, "Mom, are we falling?" His mother pulled him close, whispering something she didn't even believe. A teenage guy in the aisle seat looked at Emily. "What's happening? Are we crashing?" She didn't answer. She couldn't lie. She couldn't tell him the truth either. The plane shook again, harder this time. The intercom clicked. Silence. Then the captain's voice roared across the speakers. Is there any pilot on board? Any licensed pilot, please report to the front immediately. Gasps rippled across the cabin. A pilot. They needed a pilot. Did that mean the co-pilot was hurt, unconscious, dead? Did that mean... Oh God! There weren't enough hands in the cockpit. Emily's breath caught. Her heart didn't just pound, it slammed. She looked down at her hands, small, pale, trembling. But trained. Trained in a life she had abandoned. Trained in a world she had walked away from the day it shattered. She whispered into her mask. No, not me, not after what happened. I can't do this again. But then the plane lurched downward in a sickening drop. Someone screamed behind her. A man shouted, "Where are the damn pilots?" The baby in row 9 howled. Emily's decision hit like lightning. She unbuckled. Her seatmate stared. What are you doing? I have to go, she said, voice trembling but determined. You can't, they said, stay seated. Emily looked at her, really looked at her, and saw pure terror in the woman's eyes. I can help, Emily whispered. But her brain screamed the opposite. You couldn't help before. You failed once, you'll fail again. Her legs wobbled as she stood. The plane pitched forward, nearly slamming her back into her seat. She braced on the headrest in front of her, pushing into the aisle. People shouted at her, sit down. Where are you going? Are you crazy? But she kept moving. Every step felt like walking through storm wind. The aisle tilted slightly left with the yaw. Her heartbeat hammered in her ears. She could hear the alarms from the cockpit, faint but piercing. She could hear Captain Warren's raised voice. She could hear the sound of a man groaning. And beneath all of it, she could hear her father's voice, telling her to grab the yoke, telling her to breathe, telling her she was ready. Emily reached the forward galley, gripping the wall for balance. A flight attendant blocked her with trembling arms. You need to sit. We're in emergency descent. We need a pilot, Emily said, breathless. The attendant blinked, confused. You. Emily nodded once. But behind the nod was a secret the world didn't know. Emily Hart was not just a girl from nowhere. She was the daughter of a man once known as the best flight instructor in Wyoming. A girl with hundreds of hours in the air by the time she was 17. A girl whose last flight ended in flames. The attendant hesitated. The plane dipped violently, another scream from the cabin. Another spark from the failing engine. And then, with wide, terrified eyes, the attendant stepped aside. Emily reached for the cockpit door. Her hand trembled around the handle. She exhaled and pushed. The door swung open, and the sight inside stole the breath from her lungs. Alarms flashing red. Smoke seeping from a panel. The captain drenched in sweat, fighting the controls with both hands. And the co-pilot, unconscious, head slumped forward, blood on the collar of his uniform. The captain looked up. His eyes widened in disbelief. And the first thing he said was, "Come in." It was, You're a kid." And the plane kept falling. Emily froze in the cockpit doorway as Captain Warren stared at her like she was a hallucination. Alarms screeched from every corner, master warning lights flashing red like heartbeats. The entire cockpit vibrated with the uneven pull of the single failing engine. Smoke curled from a panel near the co-pilot's throttle quadrant. And in the middle of it all, Captain Warren, gray streaks in his hair, jaw clenched with exhausted fury, glared at her. "You," he repeated, voice cracking. "You're a kid, get back out there." But Emily couldn't move. Her eyes dropped to the co-pilot slumped over his seat. He looked young, maybe late 20s. A trickle of blood dried along his temple. His headset dangled, sparking static. His chest rose shallowly, alive but barely. The captain noticed where she was looking. "Bird strike," he snapped, fighting the yoke. Came through the windshield seal, knocked him cold. Medical help's blocked cabin in chaos. He looked at her again. "Now move." The plane jerked violently as if to underline his frustration. Emily stumbled against the wall. Passengers screamed behind her. She heard the metallic groan of the fuselage as altitude bled away. The aircraft wasn't just descending, it was sliding into an uncontrolled drop. Emily swallowed hard. Her voice came out thinner than she wanted. I'm not just some kid, I have training." Captain Warren shot her a look that could cut steel. "Training doesn't mean you can handle a 737 with dual system failure. Out." Emily didn't budge. She couldn't. Not when every instinct in her body screamed that this wasn't a situation the captain could manage alone. She could see it in the trembling of his right hand, the sweat pouring down his brow, the desperate, staggering movements on the controls. He was holding on, but barely. Her fingers curled around the metal frame of the cockpit doorway. She took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. "I learned from my dad," she said. "He was a flight instructor. I've been flying since I was 9. The captain's face shifted, just slightly. Not belief, but the first flicker of doubt, the kind that opened a crack. Emily pressed on. "I've logged over 600 hours. That got his full attention. But not in the way she hoped. 600 hours in what? He demanded. Single-engine trainers, two-seat recreational aircraft, because this, he jerked the yoke hard to counter a yaw roll, is not a family airfield joyride. Emily's face flushed, shame, fear, anger. "No," she said quietly, "it's not." Her eyes drifted over the cockpit, panels, switches, the FMC screen blinking error codes, the throttle levers trembling with vibrations from the one struggling engine. Her mind clicked through what she'd learned years ago. Emergency power, crossfeed lines, the difference between a standard stall and a deep stall, the feel of a plane fighting gravity rather than flowing with it. And then she remembered her father's voice. Aviation isn't about perfect conditions. It's about the moment everything goes wrong and you stay. You stay in the cockpit, you keep your head, you fly the damn aircraft. Her heartbeat slowed. This wasn't about bravery. It was about duty. The plane lurched again, nose dipping sharply. The altimeter wound downward faster than before. Captain Warren flinched and muttered something under his breath, flicking 3 switches in rapid succession. His motions were growing ragged. Emily stepped forward despite her shaking legs. "Sir," she said louder this time, "you can't fly this alone." That stopped him. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took in the cramped cockpit, the dead weight of his unconscious co-pilot, the shrieking alarms, the screaming passengers muffled by the door, and the reality that his hands were slipping on both physical and mental control. Emily saw that crack widen in his expression. But then he shook his head, hard. "I'm not risking 127 lives on a teenager's flight lessons." She flinched, but then something inside her hardened. "Then what are you risking them on?" she asked quietly. "You're one person trying to do the work of 2. The captain's jaw tensed. For a moment he looked like he might yell, curse, or order her out again. But the plane made the decision for him. A sudden, gut-wrenching whump shuddered through the frame. Warning lights exploded across the panel. The engine's rumbling dropped another pitch lower, dangerously low. Emily's stomach dropped. That wasn't turbulence. That wasn't random. The remaining engine was failing. The captain's eyes widened. He checked the EICAS screen. "Damn it, compressor stall," he hissed. Emily felt her blood run cold. A compressor stall at this altitude, in this descent with this damage. They were minutes away from becoming a glide bomb. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Captain Warren's breathing quickened. His left hand slapped a switch. His right fought the yoke. He muttered to himself, checklist terms, emergency procedures, fragmented phrases. But it wasn't enough. Emily knew it. He knew it. And somewhere inside, he knew she knew it. Something shifted in his eyes. Not trust, not yet, but the terrifying realization that he didn't have options. The cockpit tilted slightly left again. The plane groaned. Emily steadied herself and stepped beside the co-pilot's seat. She didn't sit. She just placed her hand on the back of it, a silent offer. Her voice softened. "Let me help." Warren stared at her. Not as a kid. Not as a passenger. But as a pilot. A very scared, very inexperienced, very untested one, but a pilot nonetheless. Emily felt his eyes flick down to her trembling fingers. She tried to steady them, curling them into fists, but she couldn't hide the shaking, the fear, the memories. If he asked her about her father, about the crash, she wasn't sure she could speak. But he didn't ask. Instead, he asked something else. "What's your name?" She swallowed. Emily Hart. He looked at her for 3 long seconds, searching her face, reading something in her eyes, something she couldn't hide even if she wanted to. Then, another alarm blared, sharper, louder than the rest. The captain cursed. Emily's heart stuttered. Engine 2 temp rising. They both looked at the glowing words. Then the captain met her eyes with a grim, resigned expression. "Get in the seat, Emily." Her breath caught. But before she could obey, a violent jolt slammed her into the panel, knocking her breathless. Passengers screamed beyond the door. The plane dipped again, hard enough that the captain had to scream over the alarms. Now, Emily stumbled into the co-pilot's seat, her hands shaking so badly she fumbled the harness twice before finally clicking it into place. The restraints hugged her chest, pulling her upright into the storm of alarms and blinking lights. She tried to breathe, but the air felt thin, like every oxygen molecule had already been eaten by fear. Captain Warren didn't give her time to think. "Hand on the yoke," he instructed, voice taut as piano wire. "Light grip, follow my lead." Emily obeyed, her fingers brushing the cool, textured surface. It felt nothing like the small aircraft controls she grew up with. This was heavier, stiffer, vibrating with the sheer force of a dying engine and 30 tons of metal ripping through the air. Her palms were sweating, so much she had to wipe them on her jeans. Behind the cockpit door she could hear the passengers, screams, shouts, a voice yelling, "We're dropping! God, we're dropping!" A baby crying so hysterically she could hear it over the alarms. The fear outside felt like a living creature crawling under the cockpit door, threatening to swallow her whole. Captain Warren yanked the yoke to the right, suspending the plane's leftward spiral. "All right, Emily. If you're here, you help fly, don't freeze on me." "I won't," she said, but her voice cracked like brittle glass. He eyed her, assessing if he believed that. She wasn't sure she believed it. The plane jolted violently, so hard the co-pilot's limp body bounced in its seat. Captain Warren slammed a lever down, trying to stabilize the yaw. His movements were confident but increasingly strained. His eyes were focused with fierce intensity, but his breathing heavy, erratic. He was burning out. And fast. Then, thud, thud, thud. Something hammered the cockpit door from the outside. "Captain," a flight attendant cried. "Passengers are panicking. A man is trying to break open the emergency exit." Captain Warren didn't break his focus. "Secure him. Sit everyone down. We're busy keeping this metal bird from nosediving." "We're trying, sir, but—" "Lock the exit," he barked. The banging stopped, then a few muffled struggles, then silence. Emily swallowed, throat dry as dust. The vision of a panicking passenger tearing at an emergency exit midair sent chills through her spine. She'd never been in a situation where people around her were this frightened, where survival depended on the smallest decisions, and she was part of that decision-making. What am I doing here? Why did I stand up? Why didn't I stay in my seat like everyone else? The thoughts slammed into her, but the cockpit demanded presence, not panic. Captain Warren flicked a switch. "Emily, I'm going to level us. Tell me what you see on the altimeter." She stared at the instrument, but it blurred. Her vision swam, her old panic response creeping back, the one she hadn't felt since the day of the crash with her dad. Her father's voice echoed over her shoulder, his last words before everything exploded. "Not again. Not again. Please, not again." "Emily," the captain snapped, "stay with me, altitude." Emily blinked the memory away and forced her eyes to focus. 24,000 feet, she managed to say, dropping fast. How fast? She hesitated, then forced herself to look at the vertical speed indicator. The number plunged downward like a stone. 3,000 feet per minute. Captain Warren cursed under his breath. Too fast. If we descend at that rate, we won't have enough range to pick a safe landing point. Emily felt the cabin tilt as the captain fought for control. She glanced sideways at him. He wasn't in control, not fully, not anymore. His right hand trembled, a tiny tremor, almost invisible except she was sitting inches away. She knew what it meant. He was going into cognitive overload, too many tasks, too many alarms, too many decisions, and not enough oxygen or clarity. Even seasoned pilots cracked when the emergency didn't stop escalating. Emily tried to take a breath, but the oxygen mask had dropped around her neck, not her face. She inhaled smoky, recycled air. Focus, she told herself. Don't think. Don't remember. Just fly. Captain, Emily said suddenly, surprising herself. We should adjust flaps. At this angle, we're creating too much drag on the left side. It's worsening the yaw. Captain Warren paused mid-switch, looked at her. You're right, he said, sounding faintly shocked. Good. Emily didn't have time to feel proud. It only made her more anxious. One helpful thought didn't mean she could save a plummeting airliner. The cockpit door rattled again, this time softer. Captain, a flight attendant whispered through the crack. Some people think we're going to die. We need an update. We don't have an update, he snapped. Close the door. Emily heard her footsteps retreat. Her heart tightened. She could imagine what the cabin looked like. People clutching each other, crying, praying, staring at the floor, expecting it to become sky at any moment. She wasn't special. She wasn't qualified enough. She wasn't strong enough. Her father had been strong, and she'd watched him. No, don't think about that. Not here, not now. Another violent jolt smashed the thought away. The entire aircraft dipped several degrees. Even Captain Warren lost grip for a split second, his hand slipping on the yoke. Emily gasped and instinctively grabbed the control column to stabilize. The captain's eyes snapped to her. She froze. Sorry, I didn't mean. No, he shook his head. Something shifted in his gaze. Respect, hope. You acted on instinct. Don't apologize for that. Emily didn't trust herself to speak. The captain adjusted the throttle, grimacing. We need to slow the descent or we're toast. How? Emily breathed. His answer was simple, terrifying. You help me fly this thing. The words punched air from her lungs. I'm not ready. Nobody's ready, he cut back. But we don't have the luxury of perfect choices. We only have the choices we make. He adjusted a knob. Another alarm screamed. Hands on the yoke on my count. Her hands were trembling. Her voice barely a whisper. Captain, I haven't flown since. But a new alarm blared, louder than all the others, shrieking across the cockpit like a warning from hell. The EICAS displayed one line that made Emily's blood run cold. Hydraulic System B, pressure dropping. Captain Warren froze. Emily's breath caught. That system powered their flaps, spoilers, landing gear. Captain Warren whispered one sentence that made Emily's veins turn to ice. "Kid, if we lose hydraulic B, we lose control of the plane." And then, the pressure needle dropped again. Faster. Faster. Too fast. Emily stared at the failing system. Captain Warren stared at her. And behind the cockpit door, the entire cabin fell into terrified silence, as if they all felt the same thing at once. The plane was slipping out of their hands. Then the cockpit lights flickered, and the hydraulic pressure plummeted off the gauge. For a moment, the cockpit was nothing but alarms, red flashes, and the thin, metallic taste of fear. The hydraulic pressure gauge hit 0. Not low. Not failing. 0. Emily felt her stomach twist into a knot so tight it almost snapped. She looked at Captain Warren just as he whispered the words no passenger, no pilot, no human being wants to hear at 23,000 feet. "We just lost the aircraft's second hydraulic system." Emily's blood ran cold. Hydraulic systems weren't luxuries, they controlled everything. Flaps, spoilers, brakes, landing gear, even the smoothness of the controls. Without them, the plane didn't just become harder to fly. It became a giant metal boulder hurtling through the sky. The captain's jaw clenched so hard the muscles along the side of his face trembled. Sweat dripped from his forehead into his eyebrows. His hands tightened on the yoke until his knuckles turned bone white. His voice was low, strained, raw. "Emily, we're in deep trouble." The plane lurched again, rolling left with the uneven drag of the destroyed engine. Emily grabbed the edges of her seat, trying to hold steady as her harness dug painfully into her ribs. The cockpit vibrated like a jackhammer. "Captain," Emily said, her voice barely audible under the alarms, "without hydraulics, we can't deploy flaps on landing. We can't lower the gear. "I know," Captain Warren snapped, immediately regretting the volume. His eyes flashed with guilt. "Sorry, I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at physics." Another alarm blared. "Engine 2, compressor temp high." "Engine 2, a surge DATCTD." Emily's breath hitched. "We're going to lose the second engine, aren't we?" He didn't answer. And that was answer enough. The captain switched the plane to alternating rudder mode, trying to salvage any remaining authority over the aircraft's direction. The controls fought back, stiff as stone. Emily swallowed, her throat dry. She tried to focus on breathing, on the steps her father once taught her. When planes fail, pilots don't. Stay ahead of the aircraft. Think faster than the instruments can fail. But she wasn't her father. And this wasn't a small two-seater in Wyoming. Captain Warren slammed the heel of his palm into the side panel. "Damn it! Come on, girl, hold together." The aircraft shuddered in response, as if irritated by his attitude. Emily's eyes flicked to the co-pilot again. He was still slumped, breathing weakly, blood drying against his collar. A chill rippled through her. If she hadn't stepped up, if she had stayed in her seat, the captain would be alone. He wouldn't last 5 more minutes by himself. The realization struck her chest soft and deep, like a bruise. She was no longer optional. Captain Warren shot her a look, one part panic, one part calculation. "Emily, you're ours. You said you trained with your father. What did he fly?" "Mostly small aircraft, Cessnas, Kitfox, some dual-prop trainers." "Ever flown anything with systems redundancy? Anything with a panel even half this complex?" Emily's cheeks heated. She hated the shame crawling up her spine. "No, nothing like a 737. The captain let out a bitter laugh. "Figures. My only backup is a teenager with basic flight hours." Emily felt the words like a slap. Her heart contracted painfully. She wanted to snap back. Wanted to tell him he didn't know her, didn't know what she had survived, didn't know what she carried. Wanted to scream that she wasn't just some silly kid. But the truth rose like a lump in her throat. Maybe she was a kid. A scared, shaky, guilt-ridden kid sitting in a seat meant for a lifetime-trained professional. She stared at the buckles, her breath quickening, her chest burning. Captain Warren must have sensed the change in her posture. He shot her a sharp glance. "Hey," he said, softer now. "I didn't mean that, don't spiral on me." Emily blinked hard, unexpected emotion rising in her eyes. "I'm not spiraling," she lied. "Yes, you are," he said, returning his attention to the flickering flight display. "And right now, spiraling is my job." Despite everything, despite the smoke, the alarms, the failing aircraft, Emily almost laughed. The tension in the cabin was a suffocating fog, and yet somehow the captain's attempt at humor cracked through it like a ray of exhausted sunlight. Another jolt. The plane dropped 500 feet in 2 seconds. The cockpit lights flickered once, then stabilized. The captain swore under his breath. Behind the cockpit door, the passengers screamed again, a wave of terror crashing like thunder. Emily turned at the sound. She could imagine their faces. Children hugging their parents. Strangers gripping each other's hands. People crying into phones that no longer had signal. Hope draining out of them like air from a punctured balloon. Her stomach twisted. She should have stayed in her seat. She shouldn't be here. Her breathing sped up, vision blurring, chest tightening, the panic rising like a tidal wave pulling her under. Captain Warren slapped a switch and barked, "EMILY." She jerked her head toward him. His eyes drilled into hers. "Breathe, you hear me, in through your nose, out through your mouth." Emily tried. Air scraped painfully through her lungs. "Again," he said. She inhaled, exhaled. Her panic loosened, just a bit. "Good," the captain muttered, returning to the controls. "We can't afford 2 people losing their nerve up here." Emily straightened, forcing her hands to stay steady. The captain continued, voice clipped but controlled. "I'll try to maintain pitch. You monitor our descent rate. Call out every 1,000 feet we drop." Emily nodded, jumping into task mode, something her father always said was the only way to shut down fear. The numbers blurred at first, then sharpened. 22,000. The aircraft rattled. 21,000. A faint metallic groan echoed through the frame. "Captain," Emily whispered, "the fuselage is complaining." "I know," he muttered, "she's tired." Emily's heart lurched at the word she, like the captain, saw the plane as a living thing, something alive, something fighting, something they had to protect. 20,000 feet. The alarm screamed again, loud enough to make Emily wince. "Engine 2, critical temp. Failure imminent." Emily stared at the display until her stomach turned. Her voice trembled. "Captain, the second engine, it's about to." Suddenly, a violent shudder blasted through the aircraft. The entire cockpit pitched forward, both of them thrown against their harnesses, the engine coughing a death rattle. And then, boom! A deep, ugly explosion tore through the right side of the plane. Smoke burst into the cockpit vents. The remaining engine was gone. The aircraft went silent. Silent. No hum. No vibration. No thrust. Just the sound of wind tearing past the fuselage as the plane entered a pure glide. A falling stone disguised as an airplane. Captain Warren's face turned ashen. Emily's heart stopped. And he whispered the words that froze her soul. "Emily, we just became a glider." For a moment, Emily thought her lungs had stopped working. The cockpit felt too small, too loud, too bright, alarms flashing like angry red eyes, warning the crew that the aircraft was losing the fight. The jet shuddered violently, a tremor that ran from the tail to the nose, rattling every rivet and bolt. It vibrated through Emily's bones. Captain Warren gripped the yoke with both hands, jaw locked so tight a vein pulsed at his temple. He was doing everything he could to keep the aircraft from entering an irreversible roll. But it wasn't enough, not without help. Emily slid fully into the co-pilot's seat, pulling the shoulder harness across her chest. The seat still felt warm from the unconscious co-pilot who'd been slumped there minutes before. A thin smear of blood streaked across the headrest. Her fingers trembled. "Focus, you have to focus." Warren shot her a side glance, not trusting but desperate. "Strap in tighter," he barked. "If this thing drops into a spin, you're gonna feel it." Emily clicked the harness down one more notch, the belt tightening around her ribs like a fist. Her breath came short. She stared at the instrument panel, letting her vision adjust to the dizzying ecosystem of screens, gauges, blinking lights, pressure indicators. Bigger, heavier, faster. Everything about this aircraft dwarfed the little single-engine planes she once flew with her father. Her father. The thought scraped against the scarred edges of memory she tried to bury. A flash. His hands guiding hers on a yoke. "Easy, Emmy. Planes don't like to be forced." Another flash. Metal crumpling. Fuel burning. His voice fatting. Her stomach clenched. No, not now. The plane lurched again, forcing her back to the present. "Okay, kid," Warren shouted over the alarms. "Bring us level. Right now we're drifting into a left roll." She swallowed. "What's our airspeed?" 270 and dropping fast. "Angle 8 degrees nose down." "Okay." Her voice was steadier than she expected. "Trim left." Emily's hands hovered over the trim controls. The yoke was vibrating under Warren's grip, the aircraft fighting gravity like a wounded bird. "Do it," he barked. Her fingers slipped at first, sweat slicking her palms, but then she steadied, adjusting the trim in small, careful increments. 1 second, 2. The aircraft eased a fraction. Then another. Warren blinked, surprised. "Good, keep going." The plane began slowly, painfully to level out. The rolling subsided, not gone but manageable. A small victory. Emily exhaled shakily. Her hands remembered this, the pressure, the feel of control surfaces responding, the subtle dance of small motions making big differences. Her mind had forgotten, but her muscles hadn't. "Nice correction," Warren said grudgingly. "Didn't expect that out of you." Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. Her focus tunneled into the instruments, into the altitude steadying at an ugly but survivable rate. Then, beep, beep, beep. A new alarm. Engine 2, temperature climbing. A warning in sharp amber letters glared across the screen. ENG2 temp high. Emily's heart sank. "Captain," she pointed at the indicator. Warren's face drained. "Oh hell." The remaining engine, the only thing keeping 200 passengers from dropping out of the sky, was overheating. "We overloaded it, compensating for the lost left engine," he growled, rubbing sweat from his brow. "If it shuts down, we're gliding." Emily felt the world tilt. "Can we cool it?" "Maybe, but we're dumping altitude fast, and she's too heavy." "How fast are we losing?" 2,000 feet a minute. She stared at him. "That's unsustainable." "Yeah, welcome to flying a brick." Emily gripped the armrests, knuckles white. The cockpit shuddered again as the jet dropped through a pocket of rough air. Warren fought the yoke with both hands. "Okay," he said. "We need to try a partial power reduction, just enough to bleed off heat but not enough to stall." He motioned to the throttle. "Ease it back slow." Emily hesitated. This was a commercial jet, multi-million-dollar machinery, hundreds of lives behind her. One wrong move. Warren read her hesitation. "Heart, look at me." She did. "You can fly," he said, not soft but firm. I don't know how I know that. Hell, I don't know why you're even here, but you can do it. Now help me save these people. Her chest tightened. For a moment she felt 13 years old again, sitting next to her father in a worn two-seater plane, his hand resting on the control panel, confidence radiating from him. Emily, he had said once while they flew at dusk, everyone gets scared. Pilots just have to fly anyway. She blinked hard, pushing the memory down. Okay, she whispered, throttle easing back. Her fingers wrapped around the metal lever. She pushed just a tiny bit. The engine tone shifted, dropping from a strained scream to a guttural growl. The temperature indicator flickered, stalled at first, then lowered, barely but lowered. Warren nodded, relief flashing in his eyes. That's it, hold it there. The cabin trembled violently again, this time from a high crosswind that sent the aircraft rocking. Emily braced herself, fighting the urge to panic. Warren countered the roll, and together they held the jet steady. She dared to glance behind her. Through the cockpit door cracked open, she saw flight attendants rushing up and down the aisle, helping passengers with oxygen masks. People crying. People calling loved ones. People who had no idea how close they were to the edge. Her breath wavered. Warren caught it. Focus, heart, they're depending on us. Us, not him, not her, us. That word lit something inside her, a flicker of purpose she hadn't felt since the accident. Emily forced the panic down. She leaned forward, studying the readings, calculating possibilities in her head. Their altitude was ugly. The glide potential was worse, but they had a fighting chance if the engine held. How long will cooling it give us? She asked. Maybe 10 minutes, Warren said. 15 if we're lucky. 15 minutes to land a jet that should already be on the ground, she murmured. Welcome to commercial aviation, Warren deadpanned. The momentary humor cracked the tension like a window opening in a smoke-filled room. Then turbulence slammed them again, harder this time. The plane jerked left, alarms shrieking. Warren cursed, damn crosswind, countering. Helping, Emily said, instinct taking over. She adjusted trim again, her movements more confident now, her pulse syncing with the machine. The plane responded. Stabilized. Barely. Warren gave a sharp grunt of approval. You've done this before. Emily didn't answer, but he saw the shadow cross her face. What happened? He asked quietly. She stared straight ahead at the horizon line. The faintest tremor rippled through her voice. A crash, 2 years ago. He nodded once, not prying, not pitying, just acknowledging. Yet here you are, he said, flying again. Not by choice, Emily thought, but maybe by necessity. The engine warning beeped again, a cold reminder that time was running out. Warren checked the radar. We need a field, a runway, a miracle, take your pick. Emily swallowed. We don't have runway options, do we? No, he said grimly, but we're not dead yet. Emily tightened her grip on the controls. Then let's keep it that way, she whispered. But deep inside, a dread took root. If the engine temperature spiked again, they were going to lose power. And the plane would become a falling metal giant with nothing but gravity and instinct to keep it alive. The worst part. Emily could feel it coming. Another warning blinked. ENG2 temp rising. She froze. Not again. Not now. They were running out of altitude. And out of time. The cockpit felt like a pressure chamber, each second squeezing tighter around Emily's lungs. The moment the engine temperature alert began pulsing again, she knew this wasn't just bad. This was catastrophic. The amber warning blazed brighter. ENG2 temp high, limit EXCEDD. The only remaining engine on Flight 237 was overheating past safety thresholds. Captain Warren muttered a curse so soft it was almost a prayer. He checked the readings twice, desperate for error. It's cooking itself, he said, voice strained. Emily's hands went cold. How long until it gives out completely? Warren hesitated, never a comforting sign. Minutes, maybe. The aircraft jolted. Passengers screamed behind the cockpit door. Something metallic rattled along the fuselage. Emily tensed. What was that? Stress on the airframe, Warren said. She's not built to glide at this weight. Weight, yes, that was the problem. The plane was too heavy to simply coast gracefully to Earth like a small glider. Commercial jets weren't delicate dancers. They were beasts that needed thrust or they sank. We need to start a controlled descent, Warren said. Now. Emily's pulse hammered. A controlled descent with one failing engine. We don't have a choice. He pointed to the altimeter. We lose 2,000 feet every minute if this engine quits. We need to drop while we still have some power, so we control the fall instead of plummeting. Emily gripped the yoke. Okay, what's our glide ratio? 17-1. She did quick math in her head, instinctive, fast, terrifying. At this altitude, that gives us 20 miles, he finished, on a good day. Is today a good day? Warren snorted, humorless. Not even close. Another violent shudder rippled through the aircraft. The noise was deafening, a deep, groaning roar from the remaining engine, like it was begging to be shut off. The plane dipped nose first, and Warren shoved the yoke back to regain lift. Denver Center, this is Flight 237 declaring Mayday. Repeat, dual engine emergency, losing altitude. Warren barked into the radio. Static. Then a calm voice. Flight 237, copy Mayday. What is your altitude? The altimeter ticked down like a clock counting toward doom. 14,000 and dropping. Nearest airport is. We're not gonna make a runway, Warren cut in, blunt and fierce. We need flat terrain, a field, anything. A long beat of static, then. Understood. 237. We'll coordinate rescue crews. Keep us updated. Emily's throat tightened. Rescue crews, code for brace for crash landing. Another tremor. The engine whined louder, an animal in pain. Warren turned to her. Heart, talk to me. How you holding up? Emily didn't answer right away. She stared at the trembling controls under her fingertips. She remembered the last time she felt an airplane dying beneath her, remembered the smell of fuel, the spinning horizon, her father shouting her name. A wave of nausea hit her. Warren touched her arm, firm, grounding. Stay with me, right here, right now. She met his eyes. They weren't cold anymore. They weren't doubting. They were desperate but trusting. I'm here, she whispered. Good, he pointed through the windshield. Because we need to choose where this plane goes down. The landscape stretched out beneath them in shades of brown and gold. Colorado farmland, sparse trees, a winding river in the distance reflecting the sunlight like a strip of molten glass. Emily scanned the terrain radar. Fields are patchy, some are too short, some too rough. We just need one long enough and flat enough. But the gear, will it hold? We'll leave it up, belly landing, Warren grimaced. Less chance of flipping. Emily's stomach twisted. Belly landing meant scraping the fuselage directly on the ground. It was violent, unforgiving. A single unseen ditch or boulder could tear the plane in half. Another alarm shrieked. Engine instability, DTCTD. Emily flinched. We're seconds away from failure. Warren gripped the yoke. Then we pick a field now. Emily squinted at the horizon. Then she saw it. A long flat stretch near the river. No buildings, no trees, no fences, just hard-packed earth and a thin line of dirt road running nearby. There, she said, pointing. By the river, it's the most level. Warren followed her direction and exhaled. Not ideal. No, she agreed softly, but survivable. Then that's where we put her. He glanced at her again, this time not with command in his eyes, but with shared resolve. Emily, you ready? Was she? was the girl who hadn't flown in 2 years, who swore she'd never step into a cockpit again, really ready to help land a dying jet. A deep breath filled her lungs. Not steady, not brave, but determined. "Yes," she said, voice trembling but firm, "I'm ready." Warren nodded sharply. "All right, begin descent, pitch down 2 degrees." Emily adjusted the yoke. The plane angled downward. A murmur of terror rose from the cabin. Someone banged on the cockpit door, screaming, "We're dropping, what's happening?" Emily winced. Warren slammed a palm against the door to steady it after the jolt. "We're landing," he yelled back. "Brace positions." The engine rattled violently, coughing like a dying heart. Emily's eyes darted to the temperature gauge. It was in the red. "It's going," she whispered. "Hold it steady," Warren urged. "Keep the nose down, controlled descent." The Earth approached too fast. Sweat dripped down her temple. Altitude 10,000 feet. 9,800. 9,500. "Heart flare in 5 seconds," Warren ordered. Emily breathed sharply. "That soon?" "If the engine quits mid-maneuver, we stall and drop like a stone." Her pulse banged against her ribs. Altitude 9,000 feet. Then, wham! A blast shook the cockpit like a bomb going off. Emily screamed. Warren cursed. The engine sputtered. Then died. Silence. A horrifying, absolute silence. Just the sound of air rushing around the plane as it became nothing more than a massive, powerless glider. Emily stared at the dead engine indicator, her heart plummeting faster than the plane. Warren's voice broke through, hard and urgent. "Emily, my controls are stiff. You have to fly." Her breath froze. "I can't." "You can," Warren shouted. "Take the yoke now." Emily wrapped both hands around it. Her palms were slippery with sweat, her arms trembled. But she pulled. And the plane responded. Barely. "Heart, keep it steady," Warren said, voice tight. "You're flying a metal giant with no engines and 200 lives behind you." She swallowed hard, eyes locked on the approaching ground. "How far to the field?" she whispered. Warren looked ahead. Then his voice dropped to harsh, chilling truth. "If we miss it, even by a little, we won't make it at all." The Earth rushed upward. Emily tightened her grip. And flew. The plane glided in a long, desperate arc over the Colorado landscape, the silence inside the cockpit more terrifying than any alarm. Without the engine's roar, every creak of the fuselage sounded like a death rattle. Air screamed over the wings. The cabin behind them was a symphony of sobs, whispered prayers, and shaky breathing. Emily's fingers dug into the yoke. The dead weight of the massive aircraft fought her with every move. Flying without power felt nothing like the smaller planes she'd once known. This jet wanted to fall. Every second, gravity dragged at it greedily. "We're too high," she murmured, scanning the altimeter. Warren nodded, jaw set. "We need to drop altitude fast but controlled. Bank right 3 degrees. Emily adjusted and the plane leaned into the turn. The horizon shifted. Below, the stretch of riverbank field came into view, tan, rough, uneven, but long enough to give them a shot. "Hold that angle," Warren said. "Don't overcorrect, too sharp and we stall." "Stall?" Emily's stomach knotted. A stall now would be fatal. The aircraft would tip, lose lift, and plummet nose first. There would be no recovery. The wings shuddered again, turbulence hitting like a slap. The jet dipped. Warren grabbed the controls to steady them. "Easy," he said. "Don't fight her, guide her." Emily inhaled shaky air, instinct and training battling fear. Her father's voice whispered in her memory. "Fly the airplane, Emmy. No matter what, fly the airplane." She swallowed. Altitude. Warren checked. 6,000. We need 2,000 by field entry. We're coming in too steep. We'll compensate, nose up slightly, just slightly. Emily tilted the yoke back. The nose rose, the sinking slowed. Passengers began screaming again as the cabin tilted. A loud thud echoed from behind, luggage or something more. Emily didn't dare look back. "We're gonna die," a man shouted. "Brace positions," a flight attendant yelled. Feet flat, heads down, arms locked. Warren shot Emily a grim look. "You ready for final approach?" Her throat tightened, as ready as anyone flying a dead jet. Warren actually huffed out a breath, half laugh, half disbelief. "All right, let's put her down." The field rushed toward them, stripes of dry earth alternating with patches of grass. It looked both promising and deadly. "Speed?" Emily asked. "Too fast," Warren muttered, "but we can't slow too much or—" "We stall," she finished. "I know." He nodded, approval flickering. "Good." Emily scanned the controls, though most meant nothing now. No thrust, no backup engine, no second chances. Just gravity, air, and whatever she had left inside her. The airframe moaned. 5,000 feet. 4,000. 3,000. The river glinted to their left like a mirror. The field lay ahead, broad, uneven, filled with hidden dangers. "We're drifting right," Warren warned. "I see it." Emily adjusted trim, muscles straining. The controls were heavier without power. The jet corrected, lining up with the riverbank. "Altitude 2,000, Warren called out. "Flare in 30 seconds. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears. Sweat drenched her palms. Her arms trembled. 30 seconds until impact. Behind them, passengers braced, crying, praying. Emily focused on the strip of earth ahead. It felt impossibly small. "We're too high," she whispered again. "Then we slip her." Emily blinked. "What?" "A side slip, dump altitude without gaining speed." Her blood ran cold. "Warren, that maneuver on a plane this size." "I know," he stared straight ahead, "but we don't have a choice." A side slip was usually done in small aircraft, tilting the plane sideways so air smacked the fuselage and forced it downward quickly. Doing it in a commercial jet, practically unheard of outside simulations. If she overdid it, the wing could catch. They'd flip. Emily's heart hammered. Her father had taught her the maneuver when she was only 13. She remembered the wind roaring, the descent so fast her stomach lurched, and her father laughing, proud. "You got it, Emmy." She whispered to herself now, "Just like before, just like before." "Emily," Warren said softly, "I trust you, do it." Her breath caught. She pulled the yoke left and pressed the opposite rudder pedal. The plane tilted violently. Passengers screamed. The fuselage shook, buffeted by wind from the wrong angle. Altitude plummeted. 1,600. 1,300. 1,100. "Enough," Warren called. Emily straightened the plane slowly, carefully. Altitude 900 feet. "Perfect." Warren exhaled hard. "Beautiful." Emily didn't even feel the compliment. Her focus was razor thin. The field loomed huge now, every detail visible, every rut, every patch, every shadow. "Gear stays up," Warren reminded. "Right. Flaps to full." Emily set them. The wings expanded their surfaces, catching more air. The plane wobbled, shaky but straight. "Bring the nose up gently," Warren coached. Emily eased the yoke back. The ground rushed up too fast. "Emily," Warren warned, "flare." "Now." She flared, raising the nose to soften the descent. The plane leveled. A second later. Impact. The jet slammed onto the ground like a dropped stone. Metal screamed. The floor bucked. Overhead bins burst open. Emily's harness dug into her ribs so hard she gasped. The fuselage scraped the earth, sparks flying in waves behind them. Keep it straight, Warren yelled. Emily fought the yoke. The plane veered left, she countered. The left wing clipped a mound of dirt, jarring them sideways. Passengers wailed. The jet skidded toward the river. Closer. Closer. No, Emily pulled with everything she had. The aircraft groaned, protesting. Then shifted back toward the center of the field. They tore across the earth for what felt like forever, until the momentum finally bled off. The plane slowed. 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 Then, thud. It stopped. Silence. Except for crying, shaking, gasps of disbelief. Emily's vision blurred. Her whole body trembled. She felt weightless, unreal, suspended between terror and shock. Warren slumped back, chest heaving. He stared at Emily like she was something impossible. You, his voice cracked, you just landed a powerless jet. Emily blinked, dazed. Did we? He nodded slowly. And with a trembling, awestruck voice, he whispered, You saved every single person on this plane. Emily's breath broke, but before relief could reach her. Her vision dimmed, the world tilted. And she fell into darkness. A ringing sound dragged Emily back to consciousness, sharp and shrill, like a fire alarm buried inside her skull. Everything was blurry at first, colors bleeding into each other, voices muffled like she was underwater. Then the world snapped into focus. Smoke, broken cabin lights flickering, a jagged crack running along the fuselage ceiling, the smell of burned metal and scorched earth, and everywhere people moving, crying, climbing out of the wrecked aircraft. Emily lay slumped in the co-pilot's seat, her body held up only by the harness cutting into her shoulders. Emily, a voice urged her. Emily, stay with me. Hey, look at me. Captain Warren. She forced her eyelids open wider. Warren was crouched beside her, one hand braced on the seat, the other gripping her shoulder. His face was smeared with soot, a cut dripping blood down his temple, but he was alive, and staring at her like she'd done the impossible. Captain, she whispered. He exhaled shakily. Relief poured out of him like air from a burst balloon. Thought we lost you for a second. Emily blinked. Are we? Warren nodded, a deep, reverent nod. We made it, all of us. Her breath hitched. She turned her head, every muscle protesting, and saw passengers pouring out through the emergency slides. Some limped, some cried, some hugged strangers, but they were alive. All of them. Because she had flown again. A swirl of emotion hit her so fast her eyes stung. How bad is it? She whispered. It's a hard landing, smoke, some injuries, Warren said, but no fatalities, not a single one. Emily closed her eyes. A sob shuddered through her, quiet but raw. Warren squeezed her shoulder, grounding her. You did it, he said softly. Emily Hart, you landed a powerless jet on dirt with 200 people on board. I've been flying 40 years and I've never seen anything like it. Emily shook her head weakly. You were there, you helped. I guided, he corrected. You flew. Her breath trembled. She wasn't sure she believed him, but she felt the truth in his voice. A paramedic climbed into the cockpit. We need to get her out, go slow, she might be concussed. Warren gave her one last firm squeeze before letting the medics take over. They unbuckled her harness. As soon as the last latch clicked free, her body sagged forward. 2 paramedics caught her gently. Okay, sweetheart, lean on us, we've got you. Emily's legs felt like air. They guided her down the narrow aisle, which was now littered with oxygen masks, overturned carts, broken plastic, spilled drinks, and personal belongings scattered like confetti after a storm. Passengers stared at her as she passed, whispering, pointing, crying. That's her, someone said. The girl who flew the plane. She saved us. No way, she's just a kid. Emily's cheeks burned. She tried to shrink into herself, but she was too weak to hide. A woman holding a toddler reached out and grabbed Emily's hand. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming. "Thank you for giving my son a chance to grow up." Emily's throat tightened until she could barely swallow. She nodded wordlessly. Another passenger, a tall man with a broken arm, stepped aside so they could pass. "Hero," he murmured to her, voice cracking. Emily felt her heartbeat thud painfully against her ribs. She didn't know how to handle the word. Hero. It didn't belong to her, not after everything, not after the crash that took her father, not after the guilt she had carried for so long. But the way these passengers looked at her, the way their hands reached for her. Maybe she had earned a piece of that word today. Outside the plane, sunlight cut across the wreckage. Emergency vehicles lined the riverbank, lights flashing red and blue. Firefighters sprayed foam along the underside of the fuselage. EMTs rushed survivors toward ambulances. The air buzzed with radios, shouts, relief and disbelief. As paramedics eased Emily onto a stretcher, passengers crowded around, careful to give room but desperate to get closer. Some clapped. Some cheered softly. One woman wept openly. "God bless you," she sobbed. "You saved my husband." Emily's eyes filled again. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I just flew." Warren stepped up beside the stretcher, his voice firm but filled with warmth. "No, Emily. You did what trained pilots with full control sometimes can't." He motioned at the plane. "You put that metal beast down on dirt with zero thrust, and everyone walked away." He hesitated, then added, "Your father would be proud." The words hit Emily with a force she couldn't prepare for. Her breath broke, tears spilled, she couldn't stop them. All this time, she'd avoided the sky, avoided planes, avoided even looking at one. She thought flying again would reopen the wound. But flying today. Flying had healed part of it. "Captain," a paramedic called, "we need to transport her." Warren nodded and leaned down. "Emily Hart, you're going to be on every news channel in the country in about 10 minutes. Brace for fame, too." Emily managed a small, disbelieving laugh. "I'm no one special." "Kid," Warren said, smiling despite his injuries, "every person out here is alive because of you. That's as special as it gets." As they lifted the stretcher into the ambulance, a group of passengers started clapping again. It grew louder, stronger. People raised their hands, shouting thank yous, calling her name. Emily couldn't stop the tears. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a girl who finally stopped running from the sky. Inside the ambulance, as the doors began to close, Emily whispered softly, to the sky she once feared, to the father she once lost, to the part of herself she'd buried. "Dad, I finally flew again." The doors shut. The sirens wailed. And for the first time in years, Emily Hart felt whole.